I think he's probably lying, misperceiving. I don't know what's going on, but there's just no way. This wasn't taught in schools. Nobody takes this seriously. What is this crazy pilot talking about? But I remembered my brother Mark had seen a UFO, so I asked him about it, and he described this incredible sighting. He actually chased this object down the street in his car with his two friends, and it was very low, treetop level, just your classic silver disc with colored lights on it, a dome on top, totally silent. And it was a pretty amazing sighting. And I thought, wow, maybe he did see something, but a UFO? So I started asking other people, and I got a real shock. Found out my sister-in-law had seen a UFO. I had a good friend who'd seen a UFO, a couple of friends, 3 or 4. One had missing time, which, as you may know if you study this subject, is significant. Could mean an abduction, so to speak.
I saw some of your content that resembled something one of my viewers brought up yesterday. Now, I go back to the story of your brother. So I'm guessing that, you got this encouraged you even more, or you went from a non-believer to believing it, because to you, your brother is a credible person, especially, your older brother. You would figure, well, he has no reason to lie, right? Or make up a story.
Exactly. Yeah, I knew he wasn't lying. It's clear to me. But I thought, maybe he wasn't misperceiving. It was close. Actually, I ended up talking to his two friends. He's like, you don't believe me? Talk to Phil and Greg. Those were his friends. And I'm like, okay, I will. And yeah, it was a real wake-up call. I brought it up at the office where I worked, doing data entry. And a bunch of people there had seen UFOs too. I was not happy.
So does your brother live in the same area, like where you work, or is this across the country? Is it?
Yeah, we were all, still living at my parents' house at that time. Well, not all of us. Let me think. My brother had moved out by that time.
But so your coworkers, of course, they're also in the area.
Yeah.
Your brother's in the area.
Yeah,
and this is also in California, or where is this at?
Yep, this was all in Southern California, right outside of LA. Sort of the San Fernando Valley is where he saw it, Reseda, which is, actually not far from where I live right now. So yeah, most of these sightings that people were describing were in this area. Some had seen stuff, where they grew up or whatever. But a lot of people I knew, I'm going to say a good third of them had encounters. And it was shocking to me. I went straight to the bookstore and started checking out books on UFOs and got another shock. The books did not say that this was swamp gas or anything like that. It was, aliens. It was pretty clear it was aliens from the beginning, ETs, and that there was a government cover-up, and it's been going on for a long time. So I became a field investigator for the Mutual UFO Network. I started joining UFO groups like MUFON. And one thing
what does that acronym stand for?
Yeah, the Mutual UFO Network. It's a citizens UFO study group. And I didn't even know such a thing existed. I'm like, what? People are studying this?
So you went from a total non-believer to joining I guess it's an international group of UFO studies?
Yep. And it wasn't like overnight that I just believed in this. It took me a year to really okay, this has to be real. This has to be. Because just so many people were seeing this, and there was really credible witnesses. I knew the people in my family weren't lying, my friends and coworkers, but there are presidents who've seen UFOs, governors, military officials, pilots, scientists, astronomers. So it became pretty clear that this was real, but yeah, I was not happy about it. I was, heard about abductions, people being taken on board. And from what I was reading and hearing in the media, it was not a good experience.
Wow. Oh, that from the media's standpoint.
Yeah, it sounded to me like, well, people are being kidnapped against their will. They're being taken on board these craft. They're being physically examined by these bug-like aliens, grays, as we now call them. And it just sounded like real bad news. I thought, oh, is the world being invaded? Why is nobody talking about this? How could this be happening? And so that's when I started interviewing people. I'm like, okay, turned on my recorder. I'm like, Mark, tell me what you saw. I started with family and friends. And soon they started referring their friends. And eventually I put up a website because let me see, the internet came around that time, 1991, 92 or so. And it just kind of snowballed from there. I started going to UFO conventions, started speaking at the local MUFON meetings here in LA, and started writing articles for magazines and newspapers. I was dead set on figuring out what was going on here. And very slowly, I began to change my opinions about the whole phenomena. Like today, these days, I don't feel like they're here to invade us at all. I don't think there is any good evidence for the so-called alien threat narrative. They've been around for thousands of years, thousands. We have good evidence of this in terms of, I would say, like cave paintings from Neanderthals or what have you, petroglyphs from indigenous cultures, Native Americans, and so forth. Egyptian culture has hieroglyphs. There's all kinds of stone artifacts that show what look like craft or ETs and sort of spacesuits, or humanoids, I should say. But, Middle Age cave or wood carvings, Renaissance painting, they've been around forever.
They've
So
been around. In that case, I would say history shows they've been around since the beginning of record keeping, right? When record keeping was on a cave wall with a stone, with a hammer and a chisel,
yep, yep.
they were around.
Since
They
the
were
beginning,
already flying ships.
yeah, since the beginning of recorded history, probably a lot longer than that too. So, and that's an important fact because if they're going to take over, why would they have, not done it thousands of years ago? If they truly wanted to hurt people, they are so advanced that, there's nothing we could do to stop them. And that's just not what we're seeing. I remember the first time I really started to question it was when I was talking to this lady who had been taken on board a craft. She saw gray ETs. They were physically examining her, the whole deal. And she says they healed her. I'm like, what do you mean?
Wow.
Yeah, she said, well, I was diagnosed with a cyst. And she had an experience. And she was going to go to the doctor to have it removed. And the day before, literally the night before, she was going to go to the hospital and have an operation. She had an experience. And she doesn't remember quite what happened. It was sort of shrouded in missing time or amnesia. But went to the doctor, and the doctors couldn't find the cyst. They're like, what happened? You had an operation. She says, well, no. She kind of knew what had happened, but she didn't want to tell the doctor.
Wow. Yeah.
So I'm like, wow, they're healing. Is that true? Are they healing people? And by that point, I had like 50 books. I've got like 300 now. And I started going through the books. I'm like,
You have a library of books now.
I do. It's crazy. But I started, finding other cases. I was actually going to write an article about this for, a magazine, because I knew of another case where two police officers were driving through Texas, near Damon, Texas. This was some years ago in the 60s. And they came upon a UFO and shined down a beam of light which hit them in their police cruiser. And one of the guys, Officer Good was his name, had his arm hanging outside the window. When the beam struck, he could feel it. He says it was all warm and tingly. And he had been bitten by his son's baby pet alligator on his finger, which caused, a wound. And it was painful. It was bandaged up, swollen, and throbbing with pain. And this beam of light hits him and the pain goes away. So they rush off. They're scared. They're thinking, yeah, it's going to take us. And they rush off at high speeds and pull off into a diner. And he's like, my finger isn't hurting. And he pulled off the
Wow.
bandage. Yeah. And the cut was gone. Just like that. Healed by a beam of light. Like
So
to see it on Star Trek.
so this is a like at this point, should be a super credible story coming from a police officer who is, you know, in a position of protecting the community, et cetera, et cetera. And his story is, I mean, there has been more than just this story. I've heard a few other officers talking about encounters.
Oh, yeah. Lots of police see UFOs. They're out there. That's their job to look for anything out of the ordinary.
So then
Oh.
so we go back to it and we say, people, we think, well, everybody's afraid, alien invasion kind of thing. And you're saying it's not like that. There's stories that go back and reiterate that aliens are actually healing people.
Yeah, that was sort of my first clue. Because you hear a lot of people talking about being taken on board, and it's scary. It's very scary when you wake up and find yourself on board a craft, and these ETs are examining you physically, and putting weird instruments up against your body. But I will say, when someone sees an ET, and it's usually a gray, 3 foot, 4 foot, maybe 5 foot tall being, usually described as having a large head, dark wraparound eyes, no hair, wearing a jumpsuit, sort of human looking, but obviously not.
Wait, wearing a jumpsuit. So
Yeah.
so they're basically in our atmosphere. They would need a suit to be able to survive. Is that why they would wear a jumpsuit?
Hard to say. They're not wearing helmets, with a
Ah,
breathing apparatus. So apparently they can breathe our air. They are walking around.
so it could be just fashion, like us in t-shirts.
Yeah. And that's what usually people describe as these ETs wearing some sort of jumpsuit, tan, maybe crinkly silver or shiny silver, like aluminum foil, kind of a silver jumpsuit. But blue sometimes, green. There's all different types
Wow.
of it, but it's usually some sort of coverall or jumpsuit. And usually when someone is taken, it'll be like while they're driving late at night, or perhaps they're in their bedroom and these guys show up. And it's always the first words out of their mouth is almost always the same. I can't tell you how many times I've heard this. They say, "Don't be afraid. We won't hurt you."
So these are multiple encounters, and they all point back to "Don't be afraid. I'm not gonna hurt you."
Yep, that's what they always say. Almost always. It's more of a rule than an exception.
Wow.
And that's usually true. Sometimes people do report some pain during an examination. They might have a needle perhaps put into their body, and it hurts. But often when that happens, they will stop the pain for you. Not always, but usually. And I would say the worst and most scary thing I hear is this physical examination. And nobody likes going to the doctor anyway, really.
I'm sure that's. I mean, I've been looking forward to this conversation. So everything that I've been going through, I've been trying to relate with what it would be like to be abducted. Not because I don't want to be abducted. I mean, they sound like nice guys and all, but man, I'm really happy not being abducted right now. But for example, yesterday I found a puppy. I took it from his mom. Well, and showered her up. I said, "We're gonna give you a better life," Regardless, the puppy's scared to death, right? Because she's never heard sounds of a YouTube channel. She's never heard my kids stomping on the floor. She's never heard any of this. So even though we mean well, she's scared to death,
Yeah.
crying. Even though you calm her, try to calm her down, she's still scared to death. And even like if I take her to the veterinarian and they give her some shots that she needs to be able to survive, and she's gonna cry because it hurts. So this is the same thing that I would picture an abduction being like. you're taken from an atmosphere that you're comfortable being in, because this is the only atmosphere that you know and believe exists, to all of a sudden being surrounded by um, something that looks nothing like what you've seen before, in a place that doesn't even exist in your imagination. Of course, it would be a creepy moment. So
Yeah,
I see what you mean.
yeah, and the media is kind of a little bit fear based. I mean, we kind of fear ourselves, and or it's a lot of don't go outside, you'll get shot, or this sort of
Oh,
thing in the
oh,
media. And so I think people have a tendency to jump to fear.
yeah,
And when you're having a strong fear reaction, your first sense is, well, this is bad. This has got to be bad for me. I am scared.
right.
And what we find actually is these ETs don't quite understand why people are so scared. It surprises them that we are so emotional. And this is often why they will put a person sort of unconscious. And next thing the person knows, they're back in their bed and they don't remember what happened, other than, little bits, flashes, flashbacks, you know, this sort of thing. But they're
Makes sense.
missing an hour or two. But if a person doesn't have a strong fear reaction, they're like, oh, look at you. Wow, you look strange. Uh, the ETs will communicate with them and
They'll
say, oh,
interact.
yeah, they'll say, we're here to, examine you. We're here to give you a message or heal you. And if there is a message, it's usually along the lines of, why do you guys mess around with nuclear power? What is the business with all these wars? How come you're using fossil fuels when there are so many different energy sources? Why are you polluting your planet? Do you not realize that this is dangerous? So they're trying, this is the same message over and over again. They're very concerned about nuclear power. That's for sure.
Wow.
So, and they will take you to the engine room. This is not unusual. If you don't start like fighting with them and screaming and, having a major panic attack, they will give you a tour of the craft.
Like, if you're having an enlightening moment,
Yes.
um, they'll realize that and show you more.
Yep. They show you the engine room, which is usually sort of a equipment that people can't quite understand. And they try to explain it. They said that they use anti-gravity, basically. They have devices that allow them to sort of harness the magnetic fields of our planet. And that's how they fly. And they will take you to the what we would call the helm or the control room, the cockpit.
Right.
And they're like, this is how we fly. Do you want to sit in the chair? You can try it if you'd like.
Wow.
That doesn't happen a whole lot, but fairly regularly.
So
Depending
there's
on,
more to it than what Hollywood portrays.
yeah. Remember that movie Fire in the Sky?
That's the movie. I saw that movie when I was like 7 years old. My brother worked at the movies. He took me in there for free. Scared the living crap out of me. I was traumatized, dreaming of aliens for a week or two.
Yeah, it was a pretty good movie and really accurate almost all the way through it, except for one part, the most important part. That's the story of Travis Walton. This occurred in 1975. He and a group of like 5
Lumberjacks.
woodcutters, yeah, were out there in the forest in Arizona and came upon a UFO. Travis Walton ran under it and it discharged this electrical bolt, which hit him. I think he got too close. This is what he believes as well. And the other people drove off in a panic, and Travis was pulled on board and missing for 5 days. And the movie portrayed this really scary experience. And while it was scary for him, it's not what happened at all. The movie
Wow.
shows him being, pierced in the eye with his needle and this weird plastic thing going over him, and just this sort of horrific episode. When in fact he woke up and he thought he was in a hospital.
Oh,
He's,
wow. He was
he's
being treated fairly, at least.
Yeah, they were physically examining him. They had something over his chest. He believes they were trying to heal him from this electrical discharge. That's what he now believes. And it scared him bad. Yeah, he jumped up and they all filed out of the room. He walked around the craft, went into, again, what appears to be the control room.
So this is his story, not the
Yep,
Hollywood story.
yep, it's much different. This is the problem. A lot of the movies portray ETs in a negative light. Not all, but there hasn't been a whole lot of accurate movies out there. Uh, I would say Close Encounters of the Third Kind is probably the most accurate. That was a good movie.
I need to check that out.
But
So
yeah,
his story is way different than what is portrayed as, basically a super scary, horrific event that traumatized me when I saw it. To him saying that in reality, it occurred where they're being kind to him. They were showing him around like a little tour. They were not like he even believes that he was being healed.
yep. I actually wrote a whole book about healing cases. I found 300 cases, and it was
Wow.
shocking. Actually, it was my first book in 1996. I found 100 cases, but I put out a new version with 300.
First book
And
out of how many?
now I have 28. Yeah,
28. I read 21, so 28. 28 books later.
yeah, 21 UFO books, others on ghosts and Bigfoot and other paranormal stuff, because it's all connected to a certain extent. But yeah, the healing cases were the first thing that made me think, maybe these guys are not being portrayed accurately, because there's a lot of investigators in this field who are, talking to people who have been taken on board, claim to be taken on board, and they're all saying essentially the same thing. Bud Hopkins is very famous. I asked him point blank to his face. He's the leading researcher. I'm like, do you get healing cases? Because he never wrote about them. He says, oh, yeah, I do. And he says he's hopeful about the whole outcome because the ETs seem to be very interested in what he called the most lovely aspects of being human, our emotions, how we express love, this sort of thing. But every major researcher out there, pretty much without exception, has healing cases. David Jacobs, uh, John Mack, Barbara Lamb, Edith Fiore, Yvonne Smith, they all do. I see a question in the chat there about Christopher Bledsoe from North Carolina, who I have met. And he's a really nice guy. He was healed of Crohn's disease. It was bad. He was like not bedridden, but just about. He was taking all kinds of medicine. He was suffering from this disease, a digestive disease, for a good 10 years, taking all kinds of pills. It's a chronic condition. There's no known cure. And he was taken on board while camping. And a lot of people, he had like 6 people with him, including his son, and they all saw the UFOs. Some of them saw the ETs. It's a good witness. I mean, a good case with outside witnesses. And they cured him of his Crohn's disease literally within an hour. And
Christopher Bledsoe.
yep, an amazing guy. I gave him a copy of the book because he's in it.
Oh wow.
um,
So
and yeah,
you know more and are more than just aware of Christopher Bledsoe. You've actually talked to him or messaged with him. How was that experience? Was it conversation? Was it back to back message, emails, or?
yeah. Well, I was at a UFO convention, and he was speaking about his own experience there, and we ran into each other and had a nice little conversation. And he's the nicest guy, and clearly sincere. I mean, he's got good evidence. That's what I love about these healing cases. Is this is good, solid physical evidence. And I will say there are people who've been burned or whatever who have,
Like deceiving,
yeah,
like deceiving people.
it's not all Space Brothers stuff and puppies and rainbows and this is fun. There are some people who do have traumatic encounters.
Oh,
It's,
okay. I see.
yeah,
I thought you
some
meant like there was people who were hyping it up. So you're saying it's not all unicorns and rainbows because they're not all treated the same. Some people come back with horrific experience. which always goes back to perspective. So their perspective of the abduction may have been different.
Yeah, and that's a good point because I've talked to people who've had essentially the same experience, being taken on board, physically examined, and that's usually the most common thing. And some people can come away from that simple experience with real trauma, PTSD, nightmares.
Yeah, I
Uh,
can imagine that.
and others are like, no, I was fine. It didn't scare me that much. So I think it does depend on the person, but sometimes these ETs will not seem to understand a person's fear or emotion as opposed to other times. So I'm not going to blame it all on the witness. No, some
Well,
people do have negative experiences, hands down.
it's the same as hospital visits. They're not all the same. Some people will go to a hospital and say, "Oh, they treated me great. They're fantastic. This is the best hospital in the state." And then there'll be that one customer who says, "I'm not a customer, patient," that would say, "It's the worst experience I've ever had in my life. I would never go back to this hospital, even if I'm dying. Send me somewhere else."
Yep.
Because there's different. So at this point, by what you just told me, I am assuming that um, as as much correlation and as much in sync that these ETs are, they're not all the same. They have a different perspective on human life or on any other life, because one of them might treat you one way and one of them might not be trying to treat you wrong, but he doesn't comprehend as much as another more experienced one does, or more knowledgeable one. This is just what I'm thinking about at the moment.
Yeah, I think there's sort of a bell curve. But I have to tell you, I've talked to people who started out very fearful. They're like, this is not good. I don't like this. I'm unhappy. They're kidnapping me. It's against my will. Make it stop. And eventually they come around. They, they realize, well, this isn't bad for me. They haven't hurt me. They continue having experiences, and it becomes much more spiritual, much more friendly. And I've talked to a lot of people. I'm going to say well over 80%, probably closer to 90. People feel like they're fine. They're not. Well, I don't want to say they're not scared because sometimes they're scared in the beginning, but I would say every now and then someone will say, "Oh, this is demonic. This is terrible. I hate it. I think they're evil." But that is super rare. Usually, I don't. I mean, I rarely hear that. And I don't think I've gotten a single case of someone who said that the ETs were trying to hurt them. Like sadistic type behavior or torture.
Like, okay, I see. Yeah.
They don't do that. They're not trying to scare a person. They're not trying to hurt you. That's not their agenda at all. But yeah, the physical examination can be very scary. And often this will happen to little kids because they track families and they will take people when they're little kids. And this can cause some trauma for the child once they reach a certain age. And they might have nightmares and PTSD. And finally, they start to realize the ETs are not there to hurt them. They're actually there to teach people. They're trying really hard to teach people about their own, say, psychic abilities, telepathy, uh, precognition, astral travel, past lives. They seem to be very much into sort of waking us up to our own, what we would call supernatural abilities.
So these ETs, for there's I guess there's levels to humans comprehending ETs. There's the humans that believe, whoa, there's an alien takeover, we're gonna be doomed. Okay, and then there is a human who says, well, yes, they are out there, and they're not gonna invade us. They would have done it a long time ago. And then there's a human who says all the stuff that you just said. Um, Coming from you yourself, where do you believe that they fit into the human timeline? Are they our ancestors? Are they our future? Are they in a timeline, if time was to even exist in their universe?
Right. Yeah, some people have thought perhaps they're us from the future. And there's a few cases where there's little clues towards that. But overall, no, I don't think that's correct. Uh, we do know that they look a lot like us. I mean, they have a head, eyes, nose, mouth, arms, legs. They're humanoid. And it's not just grays, there's basically human looking ETs. They're often called Nordics or Pleiadians.
I've heard. Oh, Palladians. I'm familiar with
Yeah,
it. They're really a topic with a lot of this era and everything that's occurring. The
yeah,
Palladians are the ones who are basically parked outside of our atmosphere, and they're able to send more messages out. But this is
yeah.
he's kind of like the Thor, right?
Yeah, yeah. I call them human looking because I'm not sure Pleiadian is really accurate or Nordic even. So I just call them human looking because they do. They look a lot like us, perhaps a little taller. They're usually described as being 6 to 6.5 feet tall, very muscular, very good looking, almost genetically perfect. Sometimes blonde hair, blue eyed, but not always. Sometimes dark skinned. I've heard every race, really.
That,
But there are definitely human looking ETs out there. There's grays, there's human looking. Another common category is kind of strange, is they look like praying mantis, the insects.
but
But
that's not the Nordics. That's a whole different.
no, that's a complete separate category. And there's a lot of them. I hear that regularly. And these guys are like 8, 9 feet tall, even taller. I talked to a Navy medic who was taken on board. It turned out he had a friend who was a contactee, and he was essentially invited on board. He asked, and he received.
Invited on board. Invited.
Invited. Yep,
That's different than an abduction.
yep, yep. His friend's like, I'm a contactee. His friend was also in the Navy. He was a personnel clerk. The guy I talked to was a medic, and his friend told Kevin, the guy I interviewed, yeah, I've been having UFO contact since I was a kid,
Wow.
and they take me on their ship all the time. I've been to their planet and so forth. And Kevin didn't believe him. He says, if that's true, I want to meet your little green friends. That's
Hmm.
exactly the word he said. And his friend said, okay, I'll see what I can do. Um, and came back and said, okay, they agreed. They're going to come tomorrow. And they did. This was while he was on a Navy ship. So it was
Wait, so,
wild.
so so he was invited while on a Navy ship,
Yep. And
and
this,
he was taken from the Navy ship.
exactly. And found himself on board this craft. And
Wow.
they he didn't want to turn, he's facing the wall because he was too afraid to turn around and look at these guys. He was scared. And they started talking to them. He's like, where are you from? And they showed him a star chart, and he could see the solar system, our solar system, and it expanded and got bigger and bigger, and there was all these huge star field, and way off in the distance this little red light started blinking, and they said, that's our planet. And they told him the name and everything.
I was about to ask, well, not about to, but earlier I was going to ask you, where do you believe that they're from? Because they're obviously coming from somewhere else.
Yeah, I do think they're from other planets. And people talk about, oh, they're maybe from other dimensions or the future. And there is some aspect of time travel. They do have some weird stuff they can do with time. But I'm pretty much convinced they're from other planets for a number of reasons. Because we're, we're seeing these craft come from outer space. If you look up in the sky, it's star-like objects, and it comes swooping down. I mean, there are some that come out of the ocean or what have you, but over and over again, people see these things drop down out of the sky, and then they zip back upwards, and off they go. And
So,
they're
so
appearing on radar.
if
Uh,
they're from their own planet, like just like me and you, we're from this planet, and we have people like Elon Musk trying to get out of this planet. What do you, what is your theory to why they would be out here? interacting, or I mean, for centuries now, history says, why would they be out here interacting with us or trying to give us a message? Obviously, I guess they haven't accomplished their mission, or what do you think is their purpose?
Yeah, well, you mentioned, like, could they be our ancestors? There's some evidence to point towards that. I think our relationship to them is closer than we realize because they do seem to care about us. They've been around a long time. I think that honestly, they're upgrading our species. They're watching
Hmm.
over us, and they see that we're destroying our planet and we're on the verge of self-destruction with these nuclear weapons and the pollution and the wars and all this stuff going on. And I think they're very concerned about that. And that's one of their main agendas. That's why they're here. Another is all about genetics, particularly with the grays, because there's this whole part of this phenomena that we haven't got into yet, which is hybrid babies.
Uh-oh.
And I know how that must sound to a skeptic. Like, what are you saying? Half alien, half human babies? Yes, that's what I'm saying. And the grays, although they look different, are essentially human. They've just suffered genetic damage from radiation, from genetic manipulation. And so they have the same genes as we do, for the most part. And people have asked, like, why are you, taking our genetic material? Because they take the genetic material from men and women. And they said, we are using your genetics to reinvigorate our race.
Hmm.
So that's one of their agendas for sure. That could be why we're seeing so many accounts of grays in particular.
So at that point, there would be cross species, but not. You think if the purpose would be for them to be here on Earth, or cross species to go back to where they're from? I mean, why would they even want people? There's
Yeah,
something they find about us that
yeah,
they
they're very.
admire.
I think it's being human is something really special. We have very strong emotions. We're very rooted in the physical plane, and they seem to be very interested in us and our emotions. So it's hard to say. I mean, I hate to speculate in this
Right.
field.
I mean, just a theory, theory, just speculation, a theory. This is not a fact, right? Just in theory.
Yeah, but it's clear they are very interested in us. They're collecting animals too, and plants. They're very much what I would call scientists. They're very much into studying and learning everything they can and trying to preserve our species. I think that's the main thing. That's really why they're here, is they're trying to help us. That's become more and more clear over the years. Because initially I came in this field, I'm like, wow, this is bad. And now I see, no, they're actually trying to heal people. They're trying to wake people up about what we're doing to our planet, to ourselves. And they're trying to sort of uplift us, get us to recognize that we have abilities that we haven't even dreamed of, like precognition and telepathy and all that. That's how they communicate, is by telepathy.
After studying all this, is there any abilities that you have found that changed in your physiology? I guess that would be the word. Is there anything that has changed for you?
Yeah, yeah. Certainly for the witnesses, they people who have lots of encounters will come back and they have this weird effect on machinery. It's like their bioelectric field is really strong, and they will cause light bulbs to burn out, or computers to crash, or TVs and radios to fuzz up. I hear this over and over again. And another very common thing is people feel like they've gotten the ability to heal. And I've actually talked to people and had them do little healing sessions on me. And
Whoa.
yeah, it's
So
amazing.
you have like firsthand relationships or firsthand experiences with people who have been in situations with aliens encounters.
Exactly. And this, like one lady, Well, actually, the lady I mentioned who's had a cyst
Uh-huh.
removed, she said she had the ability to heal, and she had firsthand cases to share, and I was able to verify it. She healed one lady who was suffering from diabetes, gestational diabetes. She was pregnant, and healed her. She brought another person out of a coma following a accident, and
Wow.
she's like, "Would you like to feel what it's like?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." She's like, "I have your permission." I'm like, "Sure." She said, "Take off your shoes, and I'll run energy through your feet, and you should be able to feel it." I'm like, "Okay." And she grabbed my feet and pushed energy through it, and it was the weirdest feeling I've ever felt. It was like a mild electric shock almost. I mean, you could really feel it. This energy just pulsing up through you.
From your feet to your head, you would
Yep.
say, like all the way through your body.
Yep.
This,
It's
I mean,
crazy.
the sounds of it, these things that um aliens, ETs, Greys, Nordics, any name that is given, anybody who's extraterrestrial, I guess is the word at the moment. Um, they are doing some things that sound kind of like miracles, to be honest.
Yep. Yep. And I saw the comment there in the headline under it. They do breathe our air.
Oh, yeah, do
Uh,
they breathe what we breathe?
yeah, apparently they do. And people who are taken on the board sometimes feel like the air is a little bit different. Some might say it's stuffy or even a little thin or thick, but no, people are able to breathe on board, and so are the ETs. There are a few cases where ETs are wearing, divers helmets or spacesuits like we see on the astronauts. But that's pretty rare. And it's not just grays and human-looking and praying mantis. There's all kinds of strange humanoids of all different shapes and sizes, but they're almost always, 2 arms, 2 legs, eyes, nose, mouth, so forth. So it's very much like Star Trek. I mean, Star Trek got a lot of stuff right.
I can see
Really,
that.
it really did, which is surprising to me because I remember seeing Star Trek and thinking, no, aliens would look like, the Blob. Remember that movie, The Blob?
Yeah.
Um, that's kind of how I imagined, or the movie Aliens, which was really a good movie but scary. And that's just not how it is. The fact is, most people are seeing these human-looking beings.
Wow. Wow. So I wonder, you know, I've never. How can I put this into words? I haven't done as much research. I haven't spent almost a lifetime, which I applaud, and it's awesome, man. Because what you're doing at the moment, it takes a whole entire lifetime to be able to go from a person who didn't believe to a person who understands what is happening. Right. One thing I cannot understand, because I've always believed that there has been, for sure. I mean, it's more than more than just a chance that they were the only ones. So, what are the possibilities of it appearing in dreams or things like that? Because I have a few experiences. When I okay, so when I was a kid, I remember I would go to my neighbors. We would chill out in the back of his dad's pickup truck and just look at the sky. This is out in the country, so we can see the stars like perfect. And there would be we would see like one, like for example, one star position here, your fingertip, and then you would see another one that looked like a star going towards it, and it's like, oh, well, they're gonna clash. And then you would see it zigzag, 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 and around. And that to me, that's just an experience. To me, I have to say it's a UFO. There's no way a star is gonna zigzag. This thing was zigzagging around and go around.
Right. Yeah, that's a UFO. It, if it's way up there, it can't be a balloon. Uh, if it's that bright, and it's not a satellite, satellites don't zigzag.
Right.
So that's the most common type of sighting, actually, an anomalous light at night. And sometimes people will be watching something like that when it drops down out of the sky in a split second and is hovering at treetop level. But yeah, that's your sort of
That's when you run.
most common UFOs. Yeah,
So
yeah,
so that's one, and we saw this not once. It must have been at least three times. It was me, my buddy. We're about the same age, and his dad. So it was an actual adult. So we're not imagining things. We were seeing these. We were seeing it.
yeah. I've
And
had a few of those myself too. So
wow. Uh, and so my next question, at this point is, how could it be? Because after that, I would have little things in my dreams. I'm a guy who goes. I've had dreams that tell me things, and the next day I go and I do them, and it was right. But these dreams, and I've had those dreams where I fly out of my body and I fly into the stars and I do all these things, walk through doors. So just to give you a little bit of background. Um, but when I bring it back to the alien topic, the ET topic, I remember this dream when I was a kid where I woke up out of my dream, but in my mind I was dreaming, and the curtain, we used to sleep with our windows open out in the country, and the curtains were flying up, touching the ceiling, and I was scared, and I was scared because it was aliens, and it was they were not looking for anything. They were actually looking for picture frames of my family. That's weird. So that was one. Then a second one was where I was in an actual ship looking down on in what is Earth, and it didn't look like it looks like in sci-fi movies. It looked like just red on fire, and it was just like it. Everybody, there was a spaceship full of people, and we're leaving to a new Earth. And then another one that I had recently was where people, it was almost like an apocalypse, not because people were turning on people, but because aliens were controlling everything that was metal, which was weird. They would be locking doors. They can unlock doors. They can do all this, and everybody was scared, but for some reason I wasn't. Is there any appearances in that, or from what I just said right now? Have you ever heard any stories like that? Could it just have been a dream? Could it? I'm not an alien
no,
follower. I'm not.
actually, I have heard that from people who have had full conscious experiences and been shown the planet and it being destroyed and being told that there's a real danger of that and that we may be taken to other worlds if that does occur. So this is could be more than a dream, to be honest. I mean, yes, people dream about UFOs because perhaps they saw a movie. That's one form of it. Or a person might dream about it because they had an encounter and don't remember, and the memory comes back to them in their dreams. Or if a dream can represent actual contact, because they will come to people in the dream state, sort of pull you out of your body and you recall it as a dream, but it's more perhaps an out of body experience. Or it could be a physical experience and you just remember it that way. So dreams are one of the questions I ask people who I suspect might be having contact. I'm like, have you had any UFO dreams, alien dreams? Do you ever remember dreaming about being on a craft? And like I said, they are warning over and over again about environmental destruction. For you to describe that, Abel, I'm like, oh,
Wow.
that's a that's a red flag to me. That because if a
Uh,
person's seeing UFOs and they're having UFO dreams, and what do these dreams represent?
I mean, I didn't want to say. I can share the actual, like, in more detail. Um, Again, I've always believed in UFOs, but I've never been one to research, to be near it for it to pop into my dream. Like they said, your dream, according to scientists, there's a lot of subconscious things that are going on or whatever. Um, but how can it be subconsciously in me if I've never even thought about it and like, for, let's just say right now in this year, I've thought about it like 2 or 3 times. And then in this dream, it was humanity in a spaceship, and humanity, because it was a crowd of people in a spaceship, and and it said, like, we got to leave. We're leaving because this world is Is a doom. It's doomsday. So we fly up. So we keep going up, going up, going up, going up until I could see the world. And it's not like I said, it's not the way it's portrayed on movies no more. It's like a big ball of lava, and that's it. And then I woke up.
Yep, I've
So
heard that same exact thing. So, which is amazing because you probably haven't read these books.
no,
You haven't talked to these people, and here you are basically saying the same thing they're telling me.
here I am wearing a very, very, very similar shirt than you are right now.
Yep, another weird coincidence.
That's a coincidence, man.
But yeah, I mean, absolutely, dreams are, I think, a definite clue to all of this. That does turn up for sure.
Wow. So okay, so there could be a connection. I'm guessing because not only do they exist in a physical realm, their ability to not abduct but to forward messages exists where they can just implant that in our neurological system.
Right. Yep. Exactly. And I see a question in the chat. Can you talk about one of the scariest encounters? And yeah, I mean, I've interviewed all types of people about various ghost encounters. I've heard some really scary ghost stuff, but in terms of UFOs, one lady told me a pretty scary experience. She woke up because she heard something like scratching or rubbing against the window in her bedroom. And her husband was asleep next to her. She had just had a newborn baby who was about 2 weeks old. He was right under the window where the sound is coming from. And so she wakes up and looks at the window, and there's a gray trying to get in through the window. And it's rubbing its hands up against the glass, and that's making the sort of squeaky sound. And it's looking right at her baby. And she's thought this scared the living daylights out of her. And she thought for sure it was going to take her baby. So she tries to get up, and it slams her back in bed with this
Wow.
force. And she
Just
said,
force, no physical touch, just
yep.
force.
I'm assuming it was some sort of mental thing. It may have been able to do with because sometimes they'll point a little wand or a thing at you, a little ray gun type thing. But often no, it's just sort of mental force, and pinned her to her bed. She couldn't cry out, she couldn't scream, she couldn't move. And she said the tears were just pouring out of her eyes. She could feel tears pouring out of her eyes. She was scared for her baby. And this thing stood there for a good 2-3 minutes. And finally, it just walked away. She said it was about 6 feet tall, very tall, slender, gray skin, big dark eyes, bald, had little long fingers with little suction cups on the tips of its fingers. And it was trying to open the window. The window doesn't open, by the way. It's not the kind of window that opens at all.
So I see.
So I don't know why the ET couldn't figure that out or just walk through the wall like we often hear, actually. They will go right through the wall. So it's a weird case, but she woke up. Finally, the ET goes away, and she wakes up and scoops up her baby. She's crying. Her husband wakes up. She's like, I just saw something. She did not know what it was. This was in the late 1960s in a crowded neighborhood, by the way, in Pacoima. Lots of houses around.
So what do you think that they would, like in a case like this, and this is just a thought, right? What would you believe the reason would be for a gray to be around a newborn baby?
They're studying human reproduction because they themselves are having trouble reproducing. I got a lot of cases where a woman will be like 8-9 months pregnant and or had just had their baby, and that's when they show up. One lady I interviewed, she was driving down La Cienega Boulevard during the day. This is in LA. It's a crowded street. There are always cars on it. She's 8.5 months, 9 months pregnant, and suddenly all the cars are gone This is impossible. There's just no way. And it was freaking her out when suddenly this ball of light about the size of a grapefruit, she says, drops down out of the sky and it starts circling around her car. Scared her bad. She's like, oh my God, what's going on? And it starts straight up. And she looked up and watched it go up into the sky, looks down, and all the traffic goes zhunk. It's all around her car again.
Whoa, that's crazy.
It's a weird thing that happens.
So,
Traffic will disappear. I don't know how they do it, but they can do it.
so I would say now there's a lot of happenings that are occurring, where I, there is interaction occurring. I would say almost on a daily basis that goes unacknowledged because we are to continue to not believe in it, right? Because some people will be like, "Whoa, it's already 4 o'clock. I remember it was just 1 o'clock right now. How did I get here?" Like, oh, it just must be a bad day. It's a migraine headache, right? Because we'll find an excuse. We'll find something that will cover up. I would say, right? Because a lot of people can acknowledge the fact that there is such thing as what is that time thing called again? You know, when
Missing time.
missing time. I had this a Facebook friend of mine tell me a story that her and her husband at the time were driving up to Colorado. I guess I'm guessing out of Texas, and they were driving up there. All of a sudden, they saw a big like fog cloud around their vehicle, and by the all of a sudden there was no traffic, kind of like you described. And by the time they knew it, once they got out of that cloud, it was 3 hours later, and they were already arriving to their destination, and they were just kind of freaking out, like, what just happened?
Exactly. That's a classic case of missing time. And it usually happens in conjunction with a close-up UFO sighting, or someone might drive into a wall of fog. Happens. That's pretty common, actually. They will put that there, I think, to sort of hide the whole experience from anyone who might be in the area. So yeah, this I think this is far more common than people realize. Because I heard a quote from J. Allen Hynek, who was a part of the Air Force's Project Blue Book. You may have heard of that. This is a very well-known government UFO study. And he was part of it. He was the astronomical consultant. And he eventually left because he felt like the government was just trying to cover it up and they weren't actually trying to study this and they were lying about it. And he ended up writing his own books. But he said 1 in 40 people have been taken on board a UFO. And I read that when I was, just starting to get into this field.
Wow.
And I thought, 1 in 40? No way. I know 40 people. There's no way that that can be true. I would know someone who's been taken on board. Turned out I did. Oh, here's a really, one of the guys. He was sort of a friend of a friend. I knew him. But he's driving along the Interstate 5 through the Central Valley here in California late
Is that
at night.
like a farm market road? Like there's nothing there, kind of
Yep,
road?
exactly. This is where we grow a lot of the vegetables for the U.S. It's very isolated. It's just this long freeway out in the middle of nowhere. He's driving. His friend is in the front seat. And it's the middle of the night, like 2 a.m. or something. And they see this light ahead of him on the road. I'm thinking, is that a helicopter hovering right over the road? That's weird. And it's got all this cloudy mist and it's got colored lights around it. Well, the guy I interviewed, Kyle was his name. I call him Keith, actually. He wanted a pseudonym. He had read a number of UFO books and says he always wanted to see one. But as he got close up to this thing and realized that this was definitely unknown, he says it was really scary. He felt like nothing more than a bug to it. And that this thing was going to, yeah. And they came right up alongside it, and it starts to land next to them on the road. And sends down a beam of light, and this beam of light comes straight for their car. They're like, oh no, it's going to hit us. And it did. It scared the living daylights out of them. They were screaming. They felt for sure they were going to be captured.
And they thought they were going to be like taken up, or you think he believed there was a experience with an extraterrestrial, or he just had no clue what was going
on? He was pretty sure it was a UFO, yeah, because he had read books about it. And but he always thought it would be fun. He'd like walk up to it, knock on the door, and say, "Hi, take me on board." And he said when he saw this thing, he felt like it was coming to get him, and it scared him bad. And this beam of light comes out and strikes their car, and that's all they remember. Next thing they know, over an hour has passed, 2 hours, and they're not in the same place. They're farther along the road.
Wow.
And he's not driving anymore. His friend is.
What?
Yeah, they switched seats. And they tried to talk and they couldn't talk. They were so shook up, traumatized, they actually could not speak about it and didn't talk about it for over, for months. This is something, that happens quite a bit.
I mean, I guess it happens so often that even, Hollywood ends up picking up on some things. I actually I was seeing this TV show, and it was an experience very similar to what you said right now, where they were flip-flopped. And the crazy thing was that at the end, they all were pregnant, including the males. So I don't know, this is Hollywood.
Yeah. Well, that is definitely Hollywood, but there is some truth to that, because particularly with women, of course, will have a mysterious pregnancy. I talked to one lady from Maine. She was not intimate with her husband. They had separated, and she became pregnant following an experience. Went to the doctor. They diagnosed it. They're like, "Yep, you're pregnant. Looks like you're 2-3 months along." And at some point, the pregnancy disappeared. This is part of this thing. This is what they're doing. They are making babies. And it's a very weird, sort of crazy thing to think about. And I know how it must sound if someone's like new to this subject. But absolutely, it does happen. I talked to a lady who lost her baby at 7.5 months. And it was totally verified by doctors, by her midwife, by her husband. I mean, they could feel the baby kicking, the blood tests, all of it proved she was pregnant. They had an experience and the baby was gone.
Okay, so not just a miscarriage. The entire pregnancy basically receded. Didn't exist.
Yep, the doctors could not explain it. And there are some people who've had miscarriage, but there's nothing there. You can tell when you have a miscarriage whether there's aborted baby. Like in one of the videos I did on my YouTube channel, you mentioned before, while we were talking before the show, this lady, her name is Pat Brown.
Oh, okay, so it's the same lady. I didn't get to finish. Spoil it for me, please.
Yeah, she had that experience. She actually wanted to see a UFO. She was always kind of interested in it. Well, not really, actually, but her friend was. And her friend wanted to take her to Arizona to see these channelers, these mediums. And she's like, "Fine, I'll go." And they went there, and one of them claimed to speak for extraterrestrials. And she's like, "Oh, really? You're an ET?" He's like, "Yes, I am speaking, through another person." She's like, "I want to go aboard one of your ships." And they said, "Okay, we will take you." And that started her abduction experiences. She said it was very scary. These Greys would come into her bedroom, and she'd be fighting them all the way. She'd find herself on board, and she's fighting them. She ended up having a pregnancy that she could not explain, and lost the baby. They don't know what happened to it; just disappeared. So,
because I heard, she was having these experiences. They would show up, and then like 3 days later, show up again. So almost they had like a long weekend off or something, right? Because it'd be like routine until they gave her the yellow light, right? Because she was so scared of going up.
Yep. Her experiences started to change, actually. She was tired of being afraid. She's like, "I'm sick of this. I can't live this way. I'm not sleeping. If I'm really having experiences, I need to know. I want to go on the ship right now and figure out what's going on." And she had an experience. And they took her on board. And she saw a human-looking being who took her to, they said, "This is your quarters. Here's the ship. What do you want to know?" And they showed her all this kind of stuff. They gave her all this spiritual information. She said it completely changed her life, and it ended up being a really good experience for her. But
Overall,
yeah, but initially it was very scary.
I didn't get to. I got up to the yellow light part where she got that yellow light, and I said they'll be back when she's ready for the blue or purple. I can't remember the next light.
Right. Yeah. So that's a good example of how an experience can start out really scary, but end up being really cool. Like one lady I interviewed, she's from Florida. She had a very scary childhood because they kept coming into her room and waking her up, and her parents wouldn't listen, and she didn't know what was going on. And she finally just left home, moved off to Florida, and started having this ringing in her ears, and it's just this long, involved experience. And she finally figured out this could be ETs because she started looking it up. Like, what happens if your room fills with light and you see these shadowy figures, and what could this mean? And long story short, her husband saw a gray come into their bedroom. They had a weird pregnancy that disappeared. She was pulled on board and shown the baby. They're like, "This is your baby."
Wow.
And later, she had another experience where she talked to one of the grays, and he said, "My name is Sen." And she said, "Why are you taking me?" And he said, "We are interested in your genetics. You guys have a lot of emotions, and we're trying to reintroduce emotions into our species. We've lost the ability to reproduce, and we are using your genes." She said, "Are you planning on taking over our planet?" And he said, "No, your planet is too crowded. You guys are way too emotional. Your planet's polluted. We have no interest in your planet. There are plenty of other planets out there." She had a long conversation with him. This being showed her his planet, sort of with imagery mentally, and just had a long conversation. She said a lot of it was very science based, very sciencey. She didn't understand some of it, but this gray answered all her questions.
Wow. So basically, from what I'm receiving now, is they're not in a real estate battle for measly planet. A planet is polluted, a planet that is overcrowded. That tells me that they have a planet that either is way bigger or less populated and not as polluted.
Exactly. And she's not the only one who said this. She doesn't read UFO books. She said the subject scared her. She would not touch a UFO book if you paid her. And so she had never read anything like this. And now she doesn't feel like this was bad for her. But initially, yeah, she did. And the story she's told, I've heard other people. One lady had a very long conversation with the ETs, and they started giving her warnings. I said, "There's going to be a major earthquake. There's going to be a lot of disasters. You guys need to get ready for that." They told her that they've been around for thousands of years, and that some of the stories that we think are angels were really them.
Makes sense.
And they said that they've been upgrading humanity genetically for thousands of years to make us live longer. Not only humans, but animals as well. They told her, this is so weird, that they were upgrading the genetics of dogs and cats to boost their emotional intelligence so that they could relate better to humans, which is interesting because, if you've ever had a dog or a cat, you can see how their emotions are very much like our own.
The closest to other species, yes, definitely.
Yeah, they told her all kinds of things. They told her, "You need to tell people to stop putting out the greed and negativity that you're putting out, or else you will destroy your planet like we destroyed ours." So apparently they had a problem with it as well. They told her, "People should start disappearing from your planet. It's being done by us for the universal good, for the good of humanity." which sort of points towards your dream that you had where they scoop people up.
That dream was so real. I'd say I woke up in tears crying because I felt so bad because there was some people left behind in the world.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like probably 12, 13, right around there, and then it was like there was people that I knew that stayed here, like, hey, I'm sorry, man, this is it, we can't take any more people, this is it. In a crowded place, where you can barely stand, but it was a ship for sure, like just like they pointed, just like you said earlier,
Yeah.
with a dome on top, but this was a huge dome. Yeah.
I've had a few of those dreams myself. I've seen UFOs actually. 'Cause it wasn't enough for me to, just talk to my brothers and just, sisters and family and all the people that I was interviewing and the books. I wanted to see it myself. And I was out there in the fields. Like people would say, I saw a
Looking.
UFO. And I'm like, I'm coming over, and I camp
I'm on my
out.
way. Wow.
And I
Wow.
eventually, I did start seeing them. These were often just weird lights, but at some point they came for me specifically. I had a really weird experience where I was at my condo where I lived for many years in Canoga Park, not far from where I live now, here in Southern California. And I was just going over this interview I had done with this lady, and she's talking about alien babies. I'm like, oh my gosh, I wonder if this is real.
Wait, she was talking about alien babies.
Yeah, about how she had been shown a half human, half
an experience
baby.
that she's had.
Yeah, and I'm going over the interview I did with her. I'm like, well, I don't think she's lying, but this is a lot, because this was early 1990s. I'm trying to figure out what is going on here, and is this for real? And I'm sort of, I don't want to say doubting her experience, but I was like trying to understand
Make sure
it.
you had it nailed down.
Yeah.
Understood, yeah.
And I got this really strong impulse to go onto the roof of my condo. And
Under the roof.
Onto the roof.
Like on top of the roof. Okay,
Yeah.
onto the roof.
Yeah, which you're not supposed to do. It's against the rules.
The association rules.
Yeah. And it's funny because I'd read about this and interviewed people who were like, oh, I got this strong impulse, and I drove off the road, and that's when the ETs came. So here I am getting this super strong impulse, which I could not resist. I literally could not resist it. And I ran up on top of the roof before I even knew what I was doing.
Wow.
And I'm like, why am I up here? And I wasn't up there, I'm going to say about 10 to 20 seconds when a UFO appeared.
No way.
Oh, it knocked my socks right off. I mean, I could not believe it. It was a giant glowing orange light right across the street, right above the trees. This is in a really crowded area. And it was close and big. And I thought, oh my God, what's that? And it gave me a message. It actually gave me a message in my head.
Yeah.
And I've never had anything like that. I mean,
can you share the message, or?
Yeah, it was kind of just for me, but yeah, I'll share it. It said that, we're real.
Wow.
I'll call her Wendy. We're Wendy's ETs. You don't believe? Well, we're real. This is us. If you don't believe, watch this. And it started darting around. They didn't speak in English. This was more like a
feeling, like implanted into understanding.
I got the message. I can tell you it was clear enough. And it's, I don't have stuff like that happen to me. I did not believe in this stuff until, recently at that point. So it was like a shock. Like, I can't even tell you how shocking it was to have that happen and watch this thing dart back and forth at super high speeds right in front of me. I mean, it was maybe 100, 200 feet away. Crazy.
Like, hey, we're real. It is really, she's not lying. We are her ETs. Would you think that meant, like, certain people have ETs, like personal ETs, or like followed? Certain people will have a lifetime ability to have them around, like select few. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's, I would say, a select few. There's, because it's a lot of people, and I'm sure they're contacting other people, and they were just the ones who had contacted her. That's the way I'd put it. But she was
Understood.
in communication with them. I called her up after that. I'm like, "You're not gonna believe it."
Oh,
She's like,
wow.
"What happened?" I'm like, They came and told me you're telling me the truth." She laughed, and so did I. But I was shook up. I'm like, I couldn't even begin to. I was almost speechless. I told her, "Well, I'd really like to see them again." And she's like, "Well, you just saw them." I'm like, "But I wasn't ready. I didn't know."
So
And she was in communication with them and said she would ask them to show themselves again to me. And they did. I had a
wow.
second sighting with her. She was with me at the time. And we had drove off to this location off the freeway in Pasadena. And she says, they said they'd show up. And I'm like, okay, okay. I wasn't sure that anything was going to happen, but they showed up.
Wait. So she told you meet, like basically meet them here.
Yep. They said we went up this sort of remote location, up this, it was a little hike up this hill, no houses around at all. And we get up to the top of the hill, and she's like, "This is where they said they'd come." And I'm like, "Oh," and we just got there, and I was a little out of breath. And she screams and says, "Look!" And I turn around, and there's this object right across the street again. It was like even closer this time, about 50 feet away, maybe. And it was huge. It was about the size of a small house, like one room, maybe. Hard to say, but it was this big, giant golden, I mean, a sphere covered in golden lights. It was beautiful, actually. It was really
Oh, wow.
dazzling. It was beautiful with all these really pretty golden lights on it. Totally silent, about 20 feet in the air, maybe. Not high up at all. I mean, it was almost at our eye level and just hovering there. I didn't get any messages or anything,
It
but
was
it was,
just show up. They just showed up.
yep, it was there for a good 20 seconds, maybe, which is a long time if you're looking at something like that.
Oh man, yes, it would feel like an hour.
And then it slowly started moving away, real slow at first, and picked up speed, and then it went shoot right across. I would say 2-3 miles in a second. Left a blur of light, and it disappeared behind this mountain. I'm like, whoa, that was one of my best sightings ever. But I've had others.
So you've had personal sight. I didn't know about the personal sightings. Like the one you just shared right now is just like incredible. Like wow.
Yeah,
I mean
there's nothing like seeing it with your own eyes. There really isn't.
the most I would say well the one I shared with you earlier, and the other one was I remember being outside of in the same house out in the country, and I was playing tag with my two nieces, just running around. It's an acre, so we're running around at nighttime. Like tag, you're it, tag, you're it. We're running around this whole acre. Then we just all paused because all of a sudden it became daytime. But it was like maybe 10 seconds of that daytime. Something flew over to where it was so bright that it was daytime, and then you could see it going, and then it just became smaller and disappeared. Not a thing of my imagination. I literally, I remember at that point, I thought somebody was pointing a flashlight at us or something, and then we looked up, and all the adults were like, "Even what's going on?"
Yeah,
So,
you start to really question your eyes. It's funny because I heard people say this. If you're alone when you see a UFO, I really feel for these people who, because you question your own sanity. But when you've got another witness with you, it helps, I think. In some ways, in some ways it doesn't, because that way you can't deny it. You have to accept that you saw something crazy if everyone is seeing it.
man, so I want to. We've been talking for about an hour and a half now. I, at this point, to me, there's no time because of all the knowledge I'm soaking in is just amazing. I feel like I'm sitting in a ship and you're sitting in your ship and you're telling me your story. But if we were able to condense what is occurring versus what is being portrayed, what would you think the reality of it is? Why is it that they have been around for, we can't even say how many years because they're so advanced.
Right.
What is it that they're not intervening with us in a way where they can probably come in here and take all the nuclear weapons away if they wanted to. They can come in here and take over the whole planet if they wanted to.
Yep. And they're
It
not.
is it the whole free will kind of thing where they don't want to intervene with it because perhaps they feel that's a divine thing? Is it that maybe they still believe there is a higher being than themselves that will not allow them to come out here? Is it Are they the same guys who were out there as the Nephilims who came out in the Bible and bred with the women, but they thought they were angels? And you know, there's so much more to it. The stories. I hate to say this, right? Because I hate to say it like this. The stories that I've heard in the Bible, a lot of them, they don't make sense at some point. And but when we bring in extraterrestrials, they've been around since before the Bible. They've been around since before computers. The record keeping, like we said earlier, in a cave, hammer and a chisel. Um, what is it that they ultimately want, and what could we do more
Yeah.
than anything?
Well, I think the evidence does show that they've been around for a long, long, long time. And we're certainly not alone in this universe. There's a lot of these guys. And if you just look at the stars, you'll see the universe is teeming with life. We are just one small planet out of an endless number of planets. And they've got all kinds of missions on other planets, I'm sure. This is what we've heard from contactees. It's not all about us at all.
So
But
I'm sorry to pause you on this, right? I just want to make sure that we have everything correct. This is probably a once in a lifetime encounter with me and you. So, from what you're explaining at the moment, not only is there aliens, but it's not just about Earth. There's other planets who might be experiencing the same thing that we're experiencing right now.
exactly.
Thousands, perhaps, of other planets.
Yes, a lot. And there's all different types of ETs. And we're just getting a tiny little picture of what's going on. But the fact is, they are here. They are interacting with us. And they're very, not only technologically advanced, super technologically advanced, they're spiritually advanced. And they're not going to intervene because they respect our own free will. They could come down and heal everybody and solve all our problems and do all this, but they're not going to do that because it's up to us to grow up, to solve our own problems. And handing us all the healing technology or weapons or something would really just be bad news for us because we're already dealing with overpopulation and wars and all kinds of things like this. They respect our own autonomy, our own free will. And they know, just like any parent knows, that you can't do everything for your child. You have to learn. So I think they're helping people on a limited basis. At some point, I think they will show themselves to all humanity. Our government is covering this subject up. The US government, all the governments, they know the truth. They've known it since at least the 1940s. You may have heard of the Roswell crash in 1947. Right. It's not just Roswell. There are hundreds of UFO crashes. We have the technology. Some of the UFOs that we see flying around are, in fact, our own.
Wow.
We have reverse engineered this technology. We have the alien bodies. They know, our government knows, hands down, this is real. And that's not speculation. We can prove this from documents released through the Freedom of Information Act and from hundreds upon hundreds of what I would call whistleblowers who worked within government and guarded crashed UFOs, or picked up the wreckage from Roswell, and this sort of thing. We know that the government is covering this up, and there's a whole disclosure process going on right now where our government and other governments around the world are letting out bits and pieces of the truth. I'm not sure they're ever going to let out the whole truth, because they're still lying about it. They're putting forth a false alien threat narrative, which don't believe it for a second. ETs are not here to take over. The evidence does not show that at all. It shows the opposite. And if a UFO fires on someone and kills them, that's more likely government. Because there are some of these cases which are horrific, and it's government masquerading as ETs in some of these cases. It's just, it's gotten to be really complicated. This is something the government takes very seriously. They're spending a lot of our tax dollars on this.
Why do you think the government wouldn't want us to know, about the aliens' agenda?
For a couple of reasons. I think one is basically about money and greed and power. They want to remain in control. That's ultimately what it's about. Because if the ETs were to show themselves and we all wake up to the fact that we're not alone, and that we really don't even need government or money or, all the divisiveness on our planet, the unequal distribution of wealth. Most of the money is in the hands of a select few who are the same guys who are covering this subject up. It's all about
centuries.
Yeah, it's all about greed, money, and power. There is an alien threat. It's the threat to those guys, the guys who are covering it up, to their jobs, to the power structure that's keeping people essentially enslaved. It's not right that everyone has to work all day long just to survive. Medicine should not be a business.
In a world of, not only a free country, but a free world.
Exactly.
In a free world, we have to still be in a way. I don't want to offend, because people get offended, but in a way, be modern day slaves for money.
That's essentially what it is, because we're not free. We're not free to live our lives the way we should. And I think that's the real reason behind the cover-up, because once this information comes out, it would change the way people think. We would realize that we are all connected. We live on one world together. And if we were say everyone was telepathic, right?
Imagine.
What if we could actually hear what each other is thinking? There would be no more lies. There would be no more corruption. There would be no more greed.
The cover will be blown. Imagine that, right? Where everybody is interconnected, and we all understand that, hey, dude, you screw everything. Don't worry about it. You don't have to do this no more. This is what I can give you. We can survive together, as a whole.
Yeah.
Versus what we are being, taught is, even in movie, first you get the power. First you get the money, then you get the power. Then so ridiculous to put power into money, but they would have no power if they had nothing to put the power into. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah,
fairy tale.
That's exactly right. We are all connected, and I think you said it perfectly. Ultimately, it's love is the answer. People all over the world are really good people. I don't think any of us want to hurt each other, but we're all in such a state of fear and struggling to survive that it's gotten to the point where people are acting crazy. And this is what I think the ETs are, why they're showing up in such large numbers and coming down and taking people on board and saying, listen, stop polluting, stop the wars, start thinking for yourselves.
Some people are evolving into wild, to being against humanity, to being evil, to being bad. How you say most people are good, but some people are being evolved being indoctrinated to becoming something they're not. But it's just part of the plan, because with people like them, they're able to plant fear, which in return tells us we need protection. And
Yep.
what and how can we get protection? Well, we offer you in this country, we offer your safety, because we have the biggest military, we have this, we have that, we can offer. Great, I want to be a citizen of that country. Take me there. You
Yeah.
know.
The problem is we're starting, and we have companies that sell weapons to both
Oh
sides,
my God.
and
Yeah.
and start wars on purpose. What? What? Why would you do that? That's not helpful. Everyone needs to start meditating, letting love and truth guide their actions, and waking up to the fact that we are being lied to. Uh, and I think we're on the point of having a real change in this world, a real paradigm shift. This
It,
cover up won't go on forever. At some
it
point, the ETs will show themselves.
um, I certainly hope that there is some kind of intervention, because some people are so brainwashed that we cannot change it on our own. We can't change it. Me and you can go out there and talk about it, and the other thousands of people who think the way we do, with enlightenment and peace, love, and being able to go back to the natural form that we were meant to be before everything was polluted. Not the world as a whole, not the world as a physical, but the world as a people. We're polluted mentally to believe certain things that are socially acceptable, and in order for you to be accepted, you have to meet a certain standard, which makes you basically delete all the stuff you were naturally born with, and now you have a whole new bar to jump over, which is whatever a society accepts.
Yep. Yep. I think the world is changing fast, and the government is no longer able to cover this subject up. There are way too many people within, who have dealt with this who are coming forward. I've talked to people myself. There was one guy I talked to who was an electrician's mate on a Navy submarine, and they had a USO show up, an unidentified submersible object
Okay.
underwater. And they were on the surface of the ocean. This was in 1971. They were traveling up the East Coast.
Whoa.
And this object,
71.
yeah, this object comes approaching from the stern of the submarine, the USS Clamagore, and paces it for about 15 minutes. And they didn't see it on sonar. The guy I talked to his name is Ray Sachs. He was a lookout, and he saw it along with the commander, the second in command, and another lookout. And a bunch of the other top ranking officers came up on deck to watch it too. And it just paced the submarine for 15 minutes before darting off. It came in at like 100 knots and moved off at like 80 knots in another direction. And I think the reason it showed up is because that submarine, the Clamagore, was carrying nuclear tipped torpedoes.
Wow.
And that was another sort of message, because they watch over anything nuclear.
Well, even now we're more than close to anything. If you've been following with the whole, China's threatening with a lot of nuclear at the moment, nuclear stuff with Australia, and then if the USA intervenes, well, then that's you too. Whoever does intervene.
Yeah.
So, some one way or another, I really do hope that there's some kind of intervention at this point, because the people in the world alone can't do it, and some sort of intervention would really help, especially proving that there is more to life than we've been taught. And
Yeah.
I applaud. To me, it's a success what you've been doing for 35 years, because you were ahead of your time 35 years ago. And for you to still be here right now, this is like fascinating.
Yeah, well, it's thanks to you and shows like yours, because this is a serious subject, and they are showing themselves. You may have heard of like the Phoenix Lights in 1997. UFOs were seen by thousands of people over the city of Phoenix.
Oh,
Or
wow.
Gulf Breeze had a huge wave. Gulf Breeze, Florida, or upstate New York in the Hudson Valley in the early 1980s. Thousands of people were seeing UFOs. They are showing themselves on purpose, bit by bit. And at some point, I think they're going to do that again. And this time we have cell phones. I mean,
Man, to the
we,
mass.
yeah, there's going to be no way you could cover this up. The Phoenix Lights happened in 1994, I believe, and that was really just before cell phones came out. But if that were to happen today, all bets would be off. I mean, we'd be done.
So, after all this conversation, what I'm able to take back from what I've downloaded is there has definitely, undoubtedly, everybody who has any sort of intelligence understands, knows for a fact that we're not alone on this planet. Anybody you can talk to right now, you can go out. Except there's a few people who don't believe in nothing yet, not at this moment. A few years down the road, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I believe," just like you were. What
Yeah.
how can I say it to you? You just like you were at one point. And if there is anything to pick up, if we understand that there is beings outside of our Earth, outside of our universe, outside of our galaxy, that shows the amount of power they hold, the amount of intelligence, the advanced technology they have to be able to enter our atmosphere, and at one point, at some points, be able to crossbreed, with a human, be able to be out here undercover, basically, and not come out here and annihilate the whole planet because they hold that power. If they wanted to, we can't even get to the moon again because we supposedly went to the moon once in this lifetime. Well, not this lifetime, but at some point. And these guys are coming out from who knows how long it takes them. Either they travel way, 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 way faster than light speed, or they have their own stations around our world where they're able to travel at light speed to get to our atmosphere.
Yeah, both, I think, actually.
Right? They should have some kind of stations. So with them having that amount of technology, they understand the threat of the nuclear, the nukes, not only because of how bad it is to the human, to the animals, to anybody living on this planet, but at some point, they're they understand that it can affect the whole universe.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the things that they're really concerned about nuclear power because nuclear explosions, according to the ETs, affect more than just Earth.
Wow.
Uh, so they're very, very concerned about that in particular. And I think also because it has the potential to completely destroy our planet. So I don't know. There was a very famous incident in 1967 over Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana, where they came down and literally shut down our nuclear missiles, shut them down.
Whoa.
And this is pretty well known in the field. I talked to a firsthand witness, and his story's in one of my books. And he was there. He saw it happen. Came right over the missile site, shut down. It went up on generator power. They shut the generator down. It went up on battery power. They shut that down. They shut down nearly 20 of these things, which are all separate. They're on separate systems. And boy, did that upset the guys up in charge, who probably took it as a threat. But I think really it was just a message. Like, we can shut this down at any instant. Why are you have weapons that will not only kill your enemy, but kill you as well? It's
And affect,
crazy.
I believe that it would affect more than just the planet. Maybe not in the timeline that we see, but in a timeline that they're able to see. Because,
Yeah, that's what they say to contactees. Now you're making me wonder, Abel.
dude, I don't know. I don't understand, man. I show up and we're wearing very similar shirts, and all this stuff is going on, man. And my mental. These are just things that are popping in. I didn't prepare for this. You didn't prepare for this. We're talking just like normal, and it just amazes me that you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, because I've heard this from other people. And I think, yeah, a lot of people some people think, some researchers and certainly some contactees think everybody is being contacted to some degree. It's just some people aren't ready, or they're not listening, or they're not there yet. But like I said, J. Allen Hynek, the Project Blue Book guy, said 1 in 40. There was a survey done by the Roper organization, a qualified survey organization that does all kinds of surveys on various subjects. They found 1 in 50 people have been taken on board a UFO. It's a lot of, that's millions of people.
Like, yeah, wow.
Yeah.
At once?
I'm not sure at once, but it's more than millions. It's like tens.
Oh, you mean total? Like,
Yeah.
man, and even we're having are these any of your followers here?
I don't know. I can't say for sure. I don't recognize
We should
things.
say hi to them.
But yeah, it's awesome.
Greetings.
I'm very happy to see
Hello.
that people are in the chat room there listening. And if you guys got any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Any
'Cause
questions or anything else that
this
you might know?
this is a serious subject. You might not believe in UFOs, but I'm telling you, for sure, they are here. There's not only photographic evidence and films, but there's landing trace cases, 1,000 of them. There's government documents. There's medical evidence, healings and injuries. They affect, animals can sense them coming. There's this thing called angel hair. It's this weird substance that they release sometimes. It's super rare, but there's enough cases now, a couple of hundred, where it's been actually measured. So it's absolutely real and proven.
Let me see. I might have to unhide this to be able to read it because it's kind of long. It says, back in 95 or 96, there was a burning light I saw in the air, and it would light up, then turn off, then light again, but a little further. This happened back in Florida. I don't know what would be, I don't know what that would be, but it scared the living crap out of me.
Yeah, that sounds like it could be a UFO, because it's not a weather balloon, obviously, and it doesn't sound like a helicopter or an airplane. We kind of go through all the theories, like what could this be?
Before you jump into it was a UFO, you narrow everything else down.
Right. And I can't say for sure from just this brief description. There'd be a bunch of questions I would ask, because I'm like, could it possibly be ball lightning? I highly doubt it. Ball lightning is super rare.
It's more rare than a UFO sighting.
Oh, by far. This sounds, just from this brief description, like your typical UFO. Because again, they will put on a display. They want people to see them. They are announcing their presence in a way that is just to small groups, a couple of people at a time, a small group of people, sometimes large groups, but not in a way that's going to cause a complete panic over the entire world until we're ready. Because there are going to be some people who will panic. But I think we're at the point now where, like you said, most people know pretty much everyone knows what a UFO is, have heard the term at least. So we're right at the point now where most people believe our government knows more than they're saying. Most people believe in the subject. We're very close to being ready, I think, for open official contact. I think it will happen. I really do.
I mean, definitely. From speaking with you today, I went from being what they would say, well, you're just a guy who believes in it, to understanding that there is more to it that is being hidden. Because I don't see documentaries like this. I don't see this kind of stuff anywhere else. But you've been able to, through a lifetime, I say lifetime again because you started 35 years ago. I'm 35 years old. So through a lifetime of collection and speaking to different people, you have been able to make this such a credible thing that it is not unnatural for people to just say, hey, I saw something in the sky today. It's not just something in the sky. There is actually a sign out there. We need to be more aware of what is going on. And the reasons that they're out there, we might not be able to disclose why you saw it today. But I mean, not
Yeah.
disclose, but we'll decipher why.
Yeah,
But
we didn't even get into like alien implants. There are people who are taken on board and they come back with like a little scar on their body and go to the doctor and there's something in there, a metallic body, a foreign body, something is in your body. And these have been removed by various researchers. Dr. Roger Lear did more than 20 or about 20 operations where he removed these objects from people's bodies. And they were weird. This was not normal.
like
This
not from here.
right. They had weird metallic structures. I mean, they could tell that some of it was iron, but it was like uh, meteoritic iron. It was a weird composition, and some of them were magnetic. A lot of them looked almost identical. Some actually gave off a radio signal or an electromagnetic signature. I've got some cases of myself. One lady sent me the X-rays. Her son has this object under his molar, under his tooth.
Whoa.
And the dentists are freaking out. There's no way for it to get there. And the body is not rejecting it, which it should. And I showed it to other doctors, and they both said the same thing. This is a foreign body.
Like impossible. Like
Yeah.
like you said, the body would be rejecting it
Yep.
at one point.
So a lot of people have these, and we know what they're for too, because people have asked ETs, "What is this?"
So
And-
what is that?
Yeah, because there's a lot of speculation, even among researchers, like, oh, maybe it's mind control. Maybe it's for tracking us like we track wild animals. And one lady I talked to asked them that, and they said, no, it's not for tracking. We can find you.
Wow.
It's for measuring your health.
Kind of
Another
like
way,
an Apple Watch.
exactly. It was to measure her vital signs. Another was told, this is to boost your immune system. Another was told, oh, we're measuring the levels of pollution in your body because you guys have a lot of pollution in your food. You need to start eating raw foods. They will give people dietary advice. They tell people to stop smoking. One lady, they said, you need to stop drinking Diet Coke because it's damaging your liver. Another lady, they said, you need to stop eating fatty foods. This is not good for you. Or stop eating meat. You're eating way too much meat.
Wow. So they're actually giving advice.
Yep. Absolutely.
That sounds better than what we get. The kind of advice that is given out here.
Yeah, this is more evidence that these guys are not here to hurt us, that they're actually concerned, but they're not going to come down and scare the living daylights out of the world until we're ready. Yeah, not until we're ready.
So that's what I was getting to. After everything, I think we're going to need like a part 5 to all this because there's so many. This was such a awesome discovery of what, this is just like they say, scratching the surface of your knowledge. And not only is it an interesting topic for guests, for a video, for people watching, this is more than a topic. To me, this is all the research that you've done through a lifetime being spread out to people who don't know. Because you have a place where people can follow you. You have a place where people can find you. But if there is that one person who's not hearing it, it might be that one person who needs to hear it to continue spreading it.
Yeah, boy, I know how I felt when I found out UFOs were real. It was hard. And I've talked to people who were skeptics when they had their encounter. And, it caused a lot of difficulty for them. Some people were ready for it and that they've always kind of believed in it. But I think this is an important subject. It really is. People need to know we're not alone. It would change the way everyone views themselves in this world. To know that we have friends out there who are very concerned about us and are rooting for us and hoping, that we can move beyond wars and beyond corruption and really start to understand. As near as I can tell, ETs don't have government or money or anything like we have here. They have a very high moral and ethical law. That's how they operate. They're all very telepathic. They understand each other. They know what each other's doing. They don't have any of the problems with crime that we have because they're all working together for the greater good. And that's what they're hoping that we do.
Wow. So these are things that nobody's open to, just whatever we see on TV.
Yep. Yep. The truth will come out. Truth has a way of taking care of itself.
Always.
You can't destroy it. You can hide it, you can alter it, but the truth is the truth. So I'm really hopeful that, we're going to be looking at a different world at some point if we can survive long enough to, you know,
Like
do
maybe
it.
not. If it's not us, you think it'll be another. The next generation. Somebody should at one point, because I mean, this is all about. Okay, so I take it right back to everything you've said today. All I understood was these guys are caring guys, right? Because if they wanted to wipe us out, they wipe us out.
Exactly.
I would say that they are activists of humans. Just like there's activists for pets, there's activists, for dogs, for cats. There's activists for them. Nobody knows the life that the cats are living out in the forest, but there's somebody who stops their life and says, "I'm gonna take this one. I'm gonna adopt it. Oh man, you need to neuter it because it's gonna become it's gonna be more and more." And not all aliens are present here. I'm guessing some of them are living their life wherever they're from, but some of them stop their life to be, I would say, activists,
Yeah.
because they
Just,
learned to have some kind of feeling for us.
just like people here, who are social workers. And this is a really good point. I'm so glad you brought it up because I'm like, who's having contact and why? Why not this person? Why this person? Why did this person get healed and not that person? And I started looking. I'm like, well, who's seeing UFOs? Who's being healed? And I got a real shock
Hmm.
because it's evenly divided between men and women. It's got
Okay.
nothing to do with religion or political party or race or blood type or anything I could find for a long time. And finally, I figured it out. There are two main patterns. One is they do track families, they will follow a certain family line. I think that's shows their interest in genetics and they're trying to upgrade the species. But another is your job, what you do. Because I saw a lot of doctors, a lot of police officers, teachers, a lot of musicians, social workers, environmentalists, animal rights activists. These are inventors. These are the people who are having contact over and over and over again. I see it. People who are doing good work for humanity in some capacity. They're helping those who are helping others. And that's another reason I'm thinking, oh, the media's got it wrong. They're trying to help people who are helping, this is their mission to uplift us, to sort of help us rescue ourselves, help us learn to take care of ourselves.
Wow. So there's more to it. This is a big eye opener, and I hope there's more conversations that we could have. Um, Today I got to meet you. This is an icebreaker to me, and you know, just knowing that you've been doing this long just tells me that you're a good guy, because there's good guys in outer space, and that's the guy. Those are the guys that you're researching. Those are the guys you're researching, and that's fantastic. We need more people like you here, and we need to get this message across, one way or another. The message that I have is just very simple. If you have in doubt, if you have in doubt seen something in the sky, it probably was something in the sky.
Yeah, yeah. Don't believe me. I mean, if you're skeptical, do your research. I think you'll see that this is a real phenomenon. They're not here to hurt us. I think, you know, like I said, the truth takes care of itself, and it's going to come out, whether people like it or not. They're going to learn one day UFOs are real.
So, all right. So, I was going to try to end it here, but I got to ask you, the Palladian, from what I understand, from what I understand, and this is crazy talk, right? For coming from a crazy guy. The Palladians, they are basically parked outside of our atmosphere, from what I understand. there are some Palladians who might be living in this world unknowingly, which might go back to the whole unexplained pregnancy things you were talking about. Um, how how uh, how much do you believe that there might be Palladians or any other ETs cross species living on this Earth
Um, yeah, I think that there are. I would call them again human looking.
without them even
Um,
knowing? Right?
but yeah, I am fairly well convinced because there are a lot of accounts of that, of people seeing ETs in public places, whether it's at a gas station or there's a bunch of cases in Las Vegas casinos, occasional restaurants, convenience stores. There was a lady who was abducted out of New York, and she had, before being taken on board, she saw this same figure right outside her school. It walked right up to her and was asking her all these questions. A basically human-looking figure, but had really weird eyes, was dressed weird, had really pale skin, white wispy hair. And she saw at a convenience store, a drugstore, looking at her. And then she was taken on board a craft, and there it was.
Wow.
So yeah, they are among us for sure. And that's just one case. I know a bunch. That's just one. I'm not gonna go on for an hour on just that.
Wow. So we need to do that again soon.
Hey,
Yep. If
anytime.
you're up to it.
You got it.
Okay, man. So I'm gonna end the live stream. Let's go backstage for a minute if you can.
Yeah.
Before we end it, Mr. Preston, do you have anything else that if we were? I like to end my show like this. If there was anything that this world needs to know today, if our life is about to end tonight when we fall asleep, is there anything you would like to say? Because video is the only place where it's going to be recorded after.
Yeah, and thanks for the opportunity. I would say be autonomous, live your life, question everything, meditate, let love and truth guide your knowledge, garden. Do not trust the lying governments on this subject. They're lying. And be prepared for the possibility of being taken off this planet, because that could happen. We could be facing basically an existential crisis. This is what a lot of contactees are saying. So for you to say, have that dream and that image, like, that's what they keep telling people. So that's something I think everyone should be prepared for. Just have fun too. That's why we're down here. And do not live in fear. Live in joy and truth and love. That would be my message.
Great. And for everybody watching now live, we appreciate you being live. If you didn't make it to the live video, we appreciate you rewatching. There is a website I'm posting up here for the record where you can find Mr. Preston's books, a lot about him. Is there anywhere else they can follow you on?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Preston Dennett. I'm on. I have my YouTube channel. Just type my name in; it should take you there. I'm also on Facebook, and my website. My books are on Amazon. I'm telling you, this is a serious subject. It's going to change the world.
It is.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I appreciate you again. I'm very, very honored. It's been a pleasure you giving us some of your time.
Hey,
awesome. You've done 35 years. 2 hours. 2 hours for me is it's great, man. Thank you.
My pleasure.